So Coolidge was really out of step with the times, which is sort of one of the reasons why a guy like Coolidge probably could have only become president the way he did, which was to be the vice president.
To kill Warren G.
Yeah. The thing is, even though Warren Harding is the type of person who will veto these kind of like big progressive projects, he isn't very good at telling cronies no. He's not very good at saying no to people who want kickbacks and jobs and other kinds of things. And after a couple of years of him in the presidency, some of his kickbacks and crony scandals start coming out. In fact, one of his people actually commits suicide. And according to, yeah, and while Harding is out on this, doing this national tour, he's like freaking out about all this crazy stuff that's like all these chickens coming home to roost on his presidency. He's sweating, he's showing signs of illness, and all of a sudden, one day in August of 1923, the guy just up and dies. Very unusual. You don't normally get that with the presidents who died in office. It was like they ate a bowl of cherries that were bad, or they were shot, or
yeah, getting shot's pretty cool. The best way to go out as president.
I think Harding's the only one who was like, he was fine. He was fine. It's just what happened? He just died.
He insisted on not getting seen, though. He was like, I must come out and wave to the people off my train. Yeah. I'm here. And then he dies.
Yeah, he just died. So, and I think it'd have to be said that the rigors of the presidency were much harder. You know, you had cross-country travel. It was a time where you had to be really active. They didn't have microphones when they spoke, so they had to scream. And it was very exhausting to be a politician in those days. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke and was incapacitated for the last 2 years. Warren Harding died. So Calvin Coolidge comes into the presidency, and, he experienced a lot of that health deterioration as well. And so a lot of the people in the White House, they're saying, like, his doctors, they're like, we got to do something to get Calvin Coolidge, some exercise so that he doesn't end up like Warren G. and Woodrow Wilson. Now, he doesn't like golf. He fishes, but he's really bad at it. So here is Calvin Coolidge.
That's why he had that? For exercise?
Yeah. This is Calvin Coolidge's Mechanical Bull.
He rode that all the time.
He did, yeah. He was a big fan of his Mechanical Bull.
I thought he was just a weirdo.
Yeah, and I actually have footage here of Calvin Coolidge riding his Mechanical Bull. Do you guys want to see Calvin Coolidge's Mechanical Bull? Does everybody want to see it?
Treat, Johnny.
Are you ready? Yeah. All right. Well,
I'm pumped.
Let's check it out here. So this is the Mechanical Bull of Calvin Coolidge. All right.
Yeah. That's great though. That made me really happy. That's awesome.
Good. Yeah, so he did ride a Mechanical Bull. He also went fishing. He was really bad at it though, and I just wanted to read you an excerpt real quick this is actually from Amity Schleye's book about when Coolidge went to South Dakota rather, for vacation, about how he fished. So, first of all, he used worms, which pissed off Herbert Hoover, who was a really great fisherman.
Are you not supposed to use worms?
I don't know. I don't understand fishing that well.
I don't like fishing. I don't like touching worms, and I don't like touching fish, and I don't have any patience, so no one ever bothered to teach me how to fish.
All right, so let's listen. So this is him. This is Coolidge goes to the Dakotas. But it was to fishing that the Dakotans, and that means like white people from South Dakota, they're not talking about the actual people of Dakota, of the Dakota tribes. But it was to fishing that the Dakotans gave the most attention. In their enthusiastic promotions, they feared they had created a trap for themselves. They had to deliver the fishing trip to end all trips. Yet Coolidge, unlike Dawes, his vice president, or Hoover, remained the most basic of fishermen, and the Dakota fish had earned fame for their wiliness. Quote, "We knew that he would never be able to catch one of our Black Hills trout," end quote, Governor Burlow later recalled. Colluding with gamesmen from all over the region, Burlow and his fish warden hatched a plan. As far away as Omaha, night crawlers had been fed on their own special diet, milk and oatmeal, so that worms 12 inches long would bait the presidential hook. At the state's spearfish hatchery swam thousands of ancient fat trout fish, so domesticated they could hardly be likened to the wild trout of the stream. Some of them were 15 years old. The warden's deputies netted hundreds of hatchery fish and put them onto trucks, then transported them by night to the president's pond. They also stretched a wire net at each end of Squaw Creek where the president would fish and unloaded the hatchery trout between nets. Squaw Creek would give the president the finest trout fishing ground in the world. Quote, "Those trout would fight and battle one another to see which one could grab the president's hook first," Governor Burlow predicted.
Did it come with a pat on the back and a handful of French fries?
Honestly,
they gave him everything.
It reminds me of something I heard about Brezhnev, that they used to do that to Brezhnev, the leader of the Soviet Union in the 70s. Mm-hmm. They would just like find some like old half dead like deer and just like put it on like sedatives and like push it out in front of him, and he'd be like, and shoot
I
it.
got it. Yeah. A 10-point buck. Yes.
Yeah. Do you think similar things happen when Trump golfs?
For sure.
You do?
That's actually reported.
Really?
Yeah, that he cheats, and they just like let him like if he like hits it off or he hits it in a sand trap, they just like put it on the green.
That's weird because like I've seen him swing a club, and he's actually pretty good. But it takes more than just being able to swing a club. You have to be able to like, you know, I don't know what his short game is like.
Probably not good.
And so what's great about Calvin Coolidge is that like you have this guy who's just like, as president, now the responsibility is to be thrust into the spotlight at all times, to do these big PR things, to get dressed up in certain ways. And there's a lot of crazy photos of Calvin Coolidge. So there's all, he just like, but he has this sour puss on his face the whole time. So it's just so funny. He's like this big, he's kind of like the grumpy cat or something that you put a hat on, you know, and you just think it's so funny because it's a grumpy cat with like a stupid hat on or something. And one of the people that actually helped out Calvin Coolidge in terms of his image, and I'm going to get that video ready now, was a guy who actually was Sigmund Freud's nephew, a guy named Edward Bernays. We may have talked about him earlier. I know I've talked about him on some of my Wilson talks that I've done, my Woodrow Wilson talks, because he did work with Wilson. But Edward Bernays actually worked with Calvin Coolidge as well. And this is a clip from a documentary called The Century of Self, which some of you may have seen. And this is Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, talking about his experience working with Calvin Coolidge and the power of public relations. So let's listen.
So I would have nothing to do with it. Hello?
Bernays soon became famous as the man who understood the mind of the crowd. And in 1924, the president contacted him. President Coolidge was a quiet, taciturn man and had become a national joke. The press portrayed him as a dull, humorless figure. Bernays' solution was to do exactly the same as he had done with products. He persuaded 34 famous film stars to visit the White House. And for the first time, politics became involved with public relations.
And I lined up these 34 people.
Oh, yeah.
I say, what's your name? He'd say, Al Jolson. I'd say, Mr. President, Al Jolson. Next day, every newspaper in the United States had a front page story. President Coolidge entertains actors at White House. And the Times had a headline which said, President nearly laughed.
So there you go, little Bernays.
The president nearly laughed.
There's a lot of those. There's that story where the woman says to him, someone bet me I could get you to say more than 2 words. And Coolidge said in response, You lose.